This story is based on the crimes of Stefan, a German psychiatric nurse who was arrested in 2019 for kidnapping and torturing women he met through dating apps. He used fake identities, often pretending to be charming or emotionally vulnerable to gain his victims' trust. Once they agreed to meet, he would lure them to his home, where he drugged, restrained, and subjected them to both physical and psychological abuse, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days. His crimes came to light when one of his victims managed to escape and reported him to the police. A search of his home uncovered disturbing evidence, video recordings, tools, and journals filled with detailed accounts of the attacks. He was eventually captured after investigators traced his activity across social networks and dating platforms, uncovering a clear pattern of manipulation and calculated isolation. During his trial, Stefan showed little remorse, claiming that what he did was an exploration of the boundaries of consent, a defense that convinced no one. He was sentenced to life in prison for kidnapping, torture, and murder after it was confirmed that at least one of his victims had died from the injuries he inflicted. The case sparked widespread debate in Germany about the safety protocols of dating services and how easily certain professionals can access controlled substances. I met him in front of the hotel. It looked old, like it hadn't been cleaned properly in years. The kind of place that still uses brass keys and has cigarette burns on the hallway carpets. I wasn't expecting luxury, but this place felt forgotten. Stefan said he liked places like this because they don't interfere. I didn't ask what that meant, but the way he said it stuck with me. His voice was calm, his eyes never blinked enough, and his smile didn't reach the skin around his eyes. He looked normal from a distance, pale but clean-shaven, tall, lean, and dressed well. But up close, there was something off about how still he stood, how he moved too smoothly, like he was always conserving energy for something worse. I told him we could go for drinks somewhere else, but he insisted the bar upstairs was more private. I nodded, mostly out of politeness, and followed him inside. I told myself I could leave any time. Inside the elevator, I noticed the silence. No music, no talking, just his steady breathing and the hum of the old system. He kept glancing at me without turning his head, just his eyes shifting while his lips stayed tight. On the 9th floor, we stepped into a hallway that smelled like mildew. He walked ahead, stopped at room 914, and unlocked the door without hesitation. The room wasn't what I expected. It wasn't romantic, it wasn't cozy, it wasn't remotely normal. There was a table set for two in the center, but no food. The chairs were bolted to the floor. Heavy curtains blocked the windows, and the lights were dim, yellow, and sickly. There was a faint smell that I couldn't place at first, something sour mixed with metal, like an old drain mixed with rotting coins. He walked in behind me and locked the door immediately. The sound made me freeze. Not just the click, but the way he did it, like he was marking the beginning of something he'd rehearsed. He removed his coat slowly, folding it carefully and laying it across the back of the chair. I didn't sit. I couldn't. My body knew something was wrong before my mind did. I asked him what we were doing here. He told me to relax. He said tonight was about sharing something honest. His tone was too soft, too collected, and that scared me more than if he'd yelled. He walked to a cabinet, opened it, and pulled out a black leather case. It looked medical. He unzipped it, revealing a line of sharp tools, each one clean, shiny, and perfectly aligned. My throat tightened. I asked him again, louder this time, what the hell this was. He turned to me, and his face had changed. He wasn't smiling anymore, but he looked satisfied, like the wait was over. What hit me hardest wasn't a punch. It was the chair against the back of my knees. He swept my legs out from under me and forced me into it in a single motion. My head bounced against the wood, dizzying me. I fought to get up, but he was already strapping my wrists down with thick leather bindings that had been attached under the armrests. I screamed and kicked, but the legs were bolted. His face was close to mine, and he whispered that the struggle made it better. The tension in the room grew like it had weight. I was breathing so fast I started to choke on air. He knelt in front of me and stared at my hands. He touched my fingers gently like they were instruments. Then he started talking. Calmly, slowly, as if giving a presentation. He told me fingers are the best place to start because they're manageable, familiar, and people tend to underestimate how much nerve damage they can take before passing out. I begged him to stop. He tilted his head, smiled faintly, and asked if I'd prefer to start with toes. When he picked up the scalpel, it wasn't dramatic. He didn't raise it or taunt me. He just selected it like a surgeon picking the right tool. My hands trembled uncontrollably. He placed the blade on my pinky knuckle and pressed down hard and quick. There was no pause. The pain was sharp and white-hot, but not the worst part. The worst part was watching him hold my finger in front of his mouth like a piece of candy and take a bite. He chewed with his mouth closed. I gagged. Blood ran down my palm, hot and thick. He murmured something about taste, something about nerves being more flavorful if the victim is awake. Then he moved to the next finger. Each cut was clean, but the way he handled my fingers made it worse. He treated them like pieces of fruit, inspecting each one before slicing. By the time he got to the middle finger, I was shaking so violently I felt the leather cutting into my skin. My legs kicked out of instinct, but he barely noticed. He just focused on eating. Every time he swallowed, he let out this little hum, like a satisfied animal. I asked him why. I didn't expect an answer, but he gave one. He said eating someone alive is the only way to feel what they feel, that when the body dies, the taste dies too. He said I was perfect because I was healthy, untainted, not ruined by sugar or smoke. He said he could taste my fear in my blood. I wanted to scream, but my throat was dry. I think I was losing too much blood. The smell of the room was unbearable now. Not just metal, meat, cooked flesh. It was coming from him. He was sweating, eyes wide, lips slick with red. He started pacing like he couldn't stand still anymore. I saw him stumble slightly, but he caught himself. He grabbed another tool, something longer, thinner, and started walking back toward me. Before he could use it, he paused. His breathing changed, his pupils dilated. Then, without warning, he dropped the instrument and sat down hard, clutching his head. His chest rose and fell erratically. He groaned, tried to speak, then collapsed sideways on the floor. The silence was worse than the pain. I didn't know if he was dying, sleeping, or waiting. He twitched on the floor, mumbling something I couldn't understand. I had seconds, maybe less. I focused on the strap on my left wrist. The blood had soaked the leather, making it slick. I twisted my hand, grinding bone against the torn edges until the strap slid off. The moment it did, pain surged, but I kept going. I reached across to the other arm, ignoring the screaming nerves. I got the second strap loose and dropped to the floor. My body felt half dead. I crawled over to where he lay. He was conscious, but barely. Sweat poured down his forehead, and his mouth was open. He whispered, "Don't leave yet," but his voice was slurred. I searched his coat for a keycard, found it in the inside pocket, and crawled to the door. Opening that door felt like tearing through a nightmare. I dragged myself into the hallway. My blood painted a trail behind me. I didn't care who saw. I screamed for help. I reached the stairs and forced myself down, my foot slipping on every third step. 9 floors. My vision blurred. I kept going. I hit the lobby like a collapsing building. The clerk behind the desk froze. Then I saw him reach for the phone. They stabilized me in the ER. 3 fingers were gone for good. The 4th was partially saved. I couldn't stop shaking even after the morphine. I gave my statement to the police that night. They searched the hotel. They found the room, the knives, my blood, even traces of another person's DNA on the chair legs. but no Stefan. They said he might have escaped before I hit the lobby, but I knew better. He let me go, or rather, his body did. The excitement had overwhelmed him. It wasn't part of the plan. He lost control of his own sickness, and that's the only reason I'm alive. 3 weeks later, a man disappeared. They found his body in an abandoned garage outside the city, fingers gone, parts missing. A month after that, they got him. Caught him cooking something on a camping stove in the middle of nowhere. He told the cops they were interrupting dinner. He smiled during his trial, never denied anything, told the court it wasn't murder, just connection. Said people like me should be honored to live inside him forever. They locked him away, but not before he asked for his own fingers to be removed and sent to his last victim. We matched on Tinder a few days before. Her profile said her name was Ray. She had short black hair, deep eyes, and this half-smile that didn't try too hard. Her pictures didn't look fake or overly filtered, which I appreciated. We talked a bit, not much, but enough. I liked that she wasn't overly available or pushy. She had this dry way of answering that came off, confident. She suggested we meet for drinks. I offered a quiet bar near a gas station outside the city. It wasn't trendy, but it had booths, warm light, and no music too loud to talk over. I arrived early, ordered a beer, waited. When she walked in, I knew something was off. It wasn't the person from the photos. She looked older, her face thinner, hair longer. The smile, though, it was the same, but stretched wider, too wide. I asked if she was Ray. She laughed, waved a hand, and told me her friend had changed her profile pictures as a joke a month ago, and she never bothered to change them back. She made it sound like nothing. I didn't push. I should have. The longer we talked, the more I realized she was hard to read. Her eyes didn't follow the conversation the way people normally do. She would answer questions I didn't ask, laugh at things that weren't funny, but she looked comfortable, like I was the one out of place. She said she worked at a psychiatric hospital. I asked if it was stressful. She smiled again, slow and crooked, like she was about to say something dirty.
It's not stressful. It's fascinating. You learn so much about what people really are.
I didn't know how to respond to that, so I let her keep going. She told me about a patient who ate the lining of his mattress piece by piece, then one who believed ants were living under his skin and tried to dig them out with a spoon. At first, I thought she was just exaggerating to mess with me.
They're not the worst ones. The ones who pretend they're sane, those scare me. The ones who smile too much, like me.
She laughed when she said that. Her voice cracked a little, and I felt the skin on my neck tighten.
Oh, come on, don't you have some sense of humor? I'm just joking.
As the night went on, her stories got darker. One about a nurse who disappeared during her night shift. Another about a girl who strangled her mother with her IV tube and pretended to be asleep when the staff came. I stopped drinking halfway through my second beer. She never touched hers, just stared at it, then at me. I offered to drive her home. She agreed fast. The road to her place was long, a narrow strip surrounded by woods on both sides. No lights, no houses, just trees and the sound of the engine. She gave directions without looking at the road, eyes fixed on me. Every time I glanced at her, she was already watching. I slowed the car after a few minutes. The tension in my stomach had turned solid. I didn't know what it was exactly, but something didn't fit. She was acting really weird. This wasn't the girl I chatted. Trying to joke about it, I looked at her and asked, "Are you really Ray?" She didn't answer, just started laughing. Not loud, not wild, quiet, breathy, like someone telling a secret to herself. Then she said,
No, I'm not. Your real date is hidden. She was screaming a lot at first, but she's quieter now.
For a few seconds, my brain just didn't register what I'd heard. I stared at her. She stared back. Then I reached for the door. Too late. She wasn't joking. She pulled something from under her coat, a long metal object. Scissors. She plunged them into my thigh before I even saw the blade. My scream came out broken, half a breath, full of pain. I let go of the wheel and tried to grab her hand, but she was already opening the door. She jumped out and ran straight into the woods, laughing like it was a game. The engine was still on. I was bleeding, confused, and shaking, but something in me snapped. If that girl was still alive in my trunk, I had to do something. I stumbled out of the car, dragging my leg behind me. The scissors were still embedded deep. I couldn't pull them out. Every step was like dragging a broken piece of myself through the dirt. The forest swallowed everything. No lights, no path, just cold air and the sound of twigs snapping somewhere ahead. I could hear her, running, laughing, sometimes stopping, then footsteps again. She wasn't trying to hide. She wanted me to follow her. The cold crept in fast, but the adrenaline kept me upright. I followed her sounds like a dying animal. The trees felt closer with each step. I could hear her bare feet brushing against leaves, quick and sharp. Then silence, too quiet. I turned slowly, trying to catch a glimpse of movement. Suddenly, a blunt object hit my injured leg. I collapsed, screamed, rolled over just in time to see her raise a thick branch over her head. The second hit landed on my ribs. I gasped, couldn't breathe, couldn't move fast enough. She raised it again, smiling down at me, her face wild, pale, and covered in dirt and dried blood.
You're slow. Ray wouldn't have liked you.
Her voice wasn't teasing anymore. It was full of contempt, of certainty. I reached for the branch, grabbed it as it came down again, and twisted hard. It tore from her grip. I swung it up and smashed it into her knee. She screamed, fell. I forced myself up, body shaking, blood dripping from my pants. I lifted the branch again, but slipped before I could bring it down. She was faster than me. Even crawling, she moved like something unhuman, jerky and wild. She clawed into the dirt and dragged herself backward, still laughing. I tried to get up again, using the branch for balance, but my leg gave out under me. She was gone, disappeared into the trees. I sat in the dirt, shaking, half-conscious, trying to listen, to track any sound, but the wind was louder than her now. I heard nothing but breathing, my own, and the faint buzz of insects nearby. I limped back toward the car, almost falling twice. My hands were shaking too hard to grab the handle at first. When I finally opened the trunk, the smell hit me like a punch. I dropped to my knees. There she was, my real date, Ray. Her face was covered in blood. Her wrists were tied with medical tape. Her chest moved weakly, barely. I tried to lift her, but I couldn't. She was cold, limp, barely conscious. I covered her with my jacket and called the police, breathing in short, panicked bursts. It took them 30 minutes to get there. I told them everything. They searched the woods all night. The next morning, they found her, the other one, sitting near a creek, humming, soaking her feet in the water. She didn't fight, just smiled when they asked where Ray was.
Oh, she's gone now. You guys are too late.
They didn't tell me exactly how Ray died, just that she was gone by the time the ambulance arrived. Internal bleeding, broken ribs, strangled with the tape she was bound in. The woman never gave a full name. She didn't have ID. She had no medical file in the hospital she claimed to work in. She wasn't staff. She was a former patient. Escaped 6 months earlier. Used someone else's name to make a Tinder account. Picked people at random. Liked long drives, remote places. They kept asking me questions like I should have known. Like I could have stopped it. But I didn't know anything. I still don't. I walk with a limp now. Sometimes I still hear her laugh. Sometimes I still see her in crowds. I know she's locked away, but it doesn't matter. The apartment where Ray lived is empty now. They never found her phone. Her family didn't even know she had been using Tinder. She hadn't told anyone she was going on a date. I still have our messages saved. They don't feel real anymore. I replay them sometimes, looking for signs. There's nothing. No hint. Just two people making casual plans. I don't go on dates anymore. I don't drive at night. I don't open messages from strangers. My life has changed, and I don't know if it will ever recover.
This story is based on the crimes of Bailey Boswell and Aubrey Trail, a couple from Nebraska who murdered multiple women after luring them through a dating app. Boswell posed as a charming young woman, while Trail acted as the controlling leader of what he described as a group or cult. He claimed to be a vampire-like figure who recruited women, including Boswell, into a secretive, ritualistic lifestyle. Both were involved in bizarre beliefs and claimed to follow occult practices, manipulating vulnerable women into joining their twisted family. Trail later said that Sydney was not part of the cult and was killed because she didn't fit in. Despite his changing stories, evidence showed the murder was premeditated. Trail was sentenced to death, and Boswell received life in prison. I matched with her on a normal Wednesday night. Her name was Lena. Her pictures were casual, nothing sexual, just some normal shots in a hoodie. One with a dog, and another in a car. We talked briefly that night, nothing deep, just enough to keep it moving. She had this way of replying that felt cold but direct. That didn't turn me away, it actually pulled me in more. We messaged again on Friday. She asked if I liked road trips, if I'd ever been tied up for fun, and if I believed people could change their minds last minute. I thought it was flirty. Creepy, sure, but not too weird for Tinder. She said she wasn't like most girls. She didn't do bars or clubs, she just wanted a quiet place to talk. Saturday night, she sent her address. It was outside town, past the highway, where GPS starts losing signal. I joked that it felt like the start of a serial killer documentary. She replied with a skull emoji and the word, maybe. That should have been enough to make me delete the chat. But I didn't. The house looked abandoned from the outside. No lights, cracked porch, and one of the windows was covered with plastic. I checked my phone. No signal. That part wasn't a surprise. I waited on the porch until she texted, "Back door, always open." That line crawled under my skin a bit, but I still walked around the side. The back door was slightly ajar. It made a slow, dragging noise as I opened it fully. The kitchen inside looked like it hadn't been cleaned in months. Dishes piled up, a smell I couldn't place. I called out her name. No answer, just footsteps above me. Then her voice came from upstairs, calm, emotionless. "Come up, first door on the left." I climbed the stairs slowly, every creak under my feet echoing too loud. I opened the door and saw her sitting on the bed, arms crossed. Her face didn't match her pictures. Same person, but something in her eyes felt hollow. She didn't speak, just looked at me, as if waiting for me to make the first move. That's when the door behind me slammed shut. I spun around and saw a man filling the frame of the door. He was heavy, balding, with a thick gray beard and eyes that didn't blink. He looked like someone who'd been waiting a long time to do something awful. I stepped back, bumping into Lena, who was now locking the door with a key she pulled from her necklace. I looked around the room and saw things I hadn't noticed before. Duct tape rolls stacked on a shelf, a thick rope coiled near the nightstand, and what looked like a plastic-covered chair in the corner. The man raised a cord in his hand and pointed it at me. "If you scream, you'll make it worse." I backed up further, only to hit the wall. Lena suddenly lunged forward and slashed my forearm with a thin blade. It wasn't deep, but it was fast and sent blood pouring down. The man took that chance to punch me in the stomach, knocking the air out of me, then grabbed me by the hair and slammed my face against the closet door. My legs buckled, and before I could react, duct tape wrapped around my wrists. What followed was a blur of movement and panic. They wrapped my arms and legs, dragged me down the hall, and carried me like a sack into a stairwell. The air shifted as we descended. It got colder, smelled like rust and piss. The light from above faded, and they pulled me into a basement that felt like a cage carved into the earth. A bare bulb hung from the ceiling, and the walls were lined with dark stains. They sat me in a wooden chair bolted to the floor. My wrists were now tied with rope, the kind that bites into your skin the more you move. I could feel splinters from the chair digging into my spine. The door closed, and the sound of the lock echoed louder than any scream. For a long time, nothing happened. I could hear faint music from above, a low, humming chant with no rhythm. My skin crawled with each passing minute. Then, footsteps. First, Lena. She wore a black dress, smeared with something brownish red on the hem. Her hands were shaking, but her face stayed still, like she was disconnected from it all. She started setting up a circle around me, drawing strange symbols on the floor using what looked like ash. She didn't speak, didn't even glance at me. Soon the man came down, dragging a duffel bag that clinked with metal. He opened it, revealing pliers, knives, candle stubs, and something that looked like a bone carved with lines. He placed each item around the circle as if following exact steps from memory. I started screaming louder and louder, but no one came. That's when 4 other people entered. 2 women and 2 men, all masked, all silent. One of them carried a camcorder. Another held a bowl filled with something thick and dark. The chanting played again, louder this time, and Lena joined them, standing behind me. Then the torture began. Not quick, not rage-filled, slow, methodical. The man pressed a burning metal rod into my thigh. The smell of searing flesh filled the room. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. One of the masked women used a needle to prick patterns into my stomach, each puncture shallow but unbearable. They whispered things while they did it. Things about power, sacrifice, doors to other places. The man leaned close and said, "They scream louder when they realize no one's coming." I could barely stay conscious. They hadn't killed me yet because they weren't finished. They were building to something, saving me for the final part of whatever this was. At some point they tied a bag over my head. It was tight, reeking of sweat and mold. I couldn't see anything, but I could hear the others shifting around, their breathing quick and shallow. Someone poured something sticky over my shoulders. It soaked through my clothes. Then came the chanting again, louder, faster, with voices overlapping. One of them pulled the bag off. The light stung my eyes. The floor around me was covered in a liquid that glistened red. Symbols now glowed faintly beneath the candles. Lena stepped forward with a knife that looked ancient. She traced the blade across my cheek, not deep, just enough to let blood run. She looked me dead in the eyes. Her voice cracked, but the words were rehearsed. "One more soul and we can see him. He's almost here." The man grabbed the back of my head and forced me to look up. Something was painted on the ceiling. A symbol pulsing under candlelight, drawn in blood. The others began a low chant, and I realized they weren't acting. They believed this. Every single one of them. As they raised the bowl, I saw an opening. My left wrist had bled enough to loosen the rope. I waited, barely breathing, waiting just for 1 second of chaos. And then it came. Right as the bowl was lifted, one of the masked women fainted. She hit the floor hard. The sound broke the rhythm of the chant. Everyone turned. I yanked my wrist free and jammed my hand into Lena's throat, pushing her back just enough to send her crashing into a candle. She screamed, her dress catching fire at the bottom. The others panicked. I used the broken chair leg to hit the man's knee. He went down, but grabbed my ankle as I tried to run. I kicked again, this time connecting with his mouth. Teeth snapped. I didn't look back. I ran up the stairs, barely able to stay upright. Blood dripped into my eye. My lungs burned. Every step felt like lifting cinder blocks. I slammed into the door, twisted the lock, and staggered out into the cold. I didn't stop running until I hit the road. A truck nearly hit me. It skidded to a stop. I collapsed. The driver yelled, but I couldn't answer. I passed out before I knew if he was real or not. They patched me up in a hospital. 30 stitches in my leg. Dozens of burns and cuts. 2 broken ribs. I told the police everything down to the last detail. The address, their faces, the ceremony. They sent officers out the same night. The house was empty. The basement had been scrubbed. No candles, no blood, no bowl, just a dusty chair and a few ropes. Lena's name was fake. The man's prints led nowhere. The people I saw in that room, ghosts. They said I must have hallucinated parts of it, that trauma can distort memory. But I remember every second, every scream, every mark on my body. And I know what I saw.